I'm Robert Thibodeau from Mayflower Bookshop, and we're at Own Cafe for kind of like a part two of the Astrology of 2014. But actually, I want to go into the depth of what is the reappearance of the Holy Grail, the possibility of the reappearance of in Rudolf Steiner's terminology, be the reappearance of Christ in the etheric. In Esoteric Buddhism, we would say that if one's attuned, one can experience the future Maitreya, future Buddha, on the etheric or astral plane. Certainly, in Rudolf Steiner's terminology, we're entering a time period where humanity as a whole is crossing the threshold of the spiritual world. And people are doing this both individually and collectively. Unfortunately, if you're not initiated or spiritually awakened or had the right mind training or Bodhi mind training, if one isn't spiritually attuned or virtuous enough or pure enough, if one isn't tuned like the right kind of radio with their thinking or their love, their wisdom and love, then when you cross the threshold in the spiritual worlds, one is kind of lame or blind or crippled. And Rudolf Steiner said that it's not bad that the earth is dying prematurely. The difficulty is that humanity isn't ready to consciously cross the threshold in the spiritual world, that people aren't prepared for this. And it's like being born prematurely. Some of you may or may not know, but whether it's due, this is a big debate, by the way, whether it's due to man-made pollution or a creation of chaos and noise on the planet, nuclear weapons, nuclear pollution, things out of harmony with Mother Nature, or whether it's due to time's up and stellar sidereal cycles and planetary cycles and the life of the sun. For whatever reason, some very peculiar things are happening. I won't go through the long list, I went through some of them last time, but there's like another spot on Jupiter, and a lot of the planets are moving faster or slower, and there's a new supernova that was just spotted recently. We're at the all-time, the one that I think is more interesting right now is we're at an all-time high, supposedly, it was predicted that we're at an all-time high of solar activity, sunspot activity and flaring, and yet, at this height of a major cycle of solar flares and sunspot activity and solar energetics, it's at an all-time low. The sun has gone quiet. The scientists have not been talking about this. Only recently, in the last couple of weeks, the BBC, The Guardian, I believe it's the Guardian newspaper, or the BBC News, I think it's the Guardian newspaper, had an article, it's something like, did the sun go quiet? And there's a lot of research on the solar winds and the solar flares that come that kind of jolt our planet and give the aurora, and they hit the North Pole. But people sometimes are like superstitiously afraid of this, you know. The scientists in the military-industrial complex is trying to convince everyone that we should build a super weapon, whether it's a super laser gun or nuclear laser gun or bomb of some sort, that we can destroy coming asteroids that come in or comets that might come and hit our planet. And without any kind of understanding, until very recently, they didn't even know that the sun could eat comets and spit them back out, or that Jupiter's job is to eat comets or asteroids that come in too close. The planets are kind of working with us, but the spiritual side of it is that when we're not working with the harmonies of Mother Nature, that things can get out of balance. The sunspot activity is very, very low And Theodore Landslad, I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly, probably not. Landslad, cosmic cybernetic guy, kind of like an esoteric astrologer guy, somewhere in the 80s, early 90s, had predicted that if the sun gets too quiet, we'd have a mini ice age. And as you know, I've been kind of talking about this possibility of that nature is going to both extremes. And if the Earth has been very, very hot, it could get very, very cold. Other times that this sunspot activity was very low was a certain number of years in the second part of the 1800s, and it was a little tiny miniature, really cold in Europe, tough time growing things. Also, for almost a couple hundred-year period in the 1600s, it was like a mini ice age. Very bad for the economy. Couldn't grow anything. And also at the height of the major witch hunts. Now we have the Al-Qaeda witch hunts. And there's always witch hunts. There's a terrorist out there somewhere. And I'm sure there is. And, I mean, we live in this time. I mean, I'm not putting it down. We live in I love good cops. It's hard to find this good priest. They are there. They are there, thank God. So there's a multitudinous array of difficult things that are taking place in the astrological world. And one of the main ones is the sun. And I'll be writing about this more as the newsletters progress. But I want to say that that is a problem. And coupled with this problem is the planet Pluto coming in April to conjunct Jupiter and Pluto will be conjunct in a grand cross. I'm sorry, Jupiter and Pluto are opposing. Pluto's in Capricorn, Jupiter's in Cancer on the United States Sun. Pluto will be opposing the United States Sun. Uranus is in Aries, and Mars is in Libra. And so this makes a grand cross. Because we don't have, it'd be nice if we had a month together. A week. We got different speakers coming in, going to do a little rhythmy and dance and yoga between these kind of talks. Because of the lack of time, and many of you know me, so I'm going to present something and then kind of cut to the point, and then present something else. So you have this picture of a grand cross in cardinal signs. And they're all at 13 degrees. And I talked last time about the huge coincidence of the number 13 as Friday the 13th, that Jacques de Molay, the head of the Templars, was arrested, and the Templars were persecuted by the Catholic Church and put to trial and quickly murdered and tortured. And the Templars, in just 200 years, basically built all the great cathedrals of Europe. The great cathedrals. When you walk in, you see the 12 signs of the zodiac in color stained glass window. There's a virgin, whether it's Isis or Mary, with the babe in the basement. There's light pouring in through the top lights and ceilings, and there's color in the middle, and dark and light meet. And you walk in these 3 doors, sets of doors, And there's a pillar on the right and left. And in Chartres Cathedral, you can clearly see there's the moon at the top and the sun. And there's a differentiation that is among the days of the moon and sun. It's exact measurements. They clearly know that whoever built Chartres Cathedral, which is the first major cathedral built after Bernard Clairvaux left Troyes. We look at it as Troyes, France. And they went and built Chartres Cathedral, and all the great cathedrals were mastered after this cathedral. A very esoteric, built on ancient Druid grounds, by the way. Chartres Cathedral was built upon. See, in the old days, they would find these ancient pagan ceremonial, spiritual grounds that had ley lines and connected to magic wells in the basement. And they're very sacred parts of the etheric astronomy of the earth. And so you could enter into these areas even without a cathedral, and you could experience a spiritual experience. Now we're going to come back to that again because there's something very interesting with many of these cathedrals. You'll walk in these three doors, you walk between two pillars of the sun and moon. What's between the sun and moon, by the way, ladies and gentlemen? The earth. And the earth spells the word, the earth is between the sun and moon, and the earth spells same letters that spells the word earth. It spells heart. And so I say that the mind and the heart, the human being, walks between the sun and the moon, spirit and matter. The sun is the light, and the moon is the champion goddess of the planets and stars. We walk between spirit and matter. When you walk in the Masonic lodge, you have the earth and the stars, the sun and moon. You walk to the Rosicrucian temple. They all have two pillars. And you walk to the center of the cathedral, and almost all these cathedrals, you walk to the center, and the highest point is there. And it opens up to the right and left. You walk into the cathedral to the center, and the altar is still up where the third eye would be. If you imagine walking into the womb of the great goddess. Ladies and gentlemen, if you just present me for a minute your imagination. The sun and the moon are the legs sticking up. And you walk through the womb. Most of us hardly remember when we came out of the womb. But Jesus says, unless you enter the womb again, you cannot be reborn. What womb is he talking about? This is very sacred. Blavatsky in the Secret Doctrine will say anything that's temporal has eternal meaning. When we look at this idea of sex and having a baby, it's symbolic of eternal realities. It's symbolic of the birth of the soul and the higher principles. We can't go into this right now, but Manly Haw goes into it. Blavatsky goes into it. Esoteric embryology, Rudolf Steiner goes into the breaking of the waters, the breaking of the Atlantis, and the waters flooding the earth. I mean, it's a whole history. And a recapitulation of the history of the earth, as well as the process of initiation. When you go to get initiated, you go into the body of a lodge. In the body of a lodge. When you talk about Allah, Muhammad, when you talk about Jesus Christ, when you talk about Buddha, we talk about the incarnation of Krishna. The incarnation. They all talk about the incarnation. People are ascending with the ascended masters, and they haven't even got here first to ascend. A little bit of a problem. I don't blame them for leaving before they got here. They probably had one glimpse of what's going on. Plato said the world's soul is crucified in time and space. He was not talking about a cross. He was talking about a fourfoldness of the physical, emotional, mental, and a sense of ego that is crucified. The spiritual self of the universal mind and universal love, compassion, and the sense of God realized self, for lack of better words. The Atma Manas, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, the Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, the Osiris, Isis, Horus, the higher trinity of ourself is kind of like caught in a crucified form of physical, emotional, mental. It's a square. It's a cube. It's the cube of the Masonic Lodge, and it's the same cube on the baseball diamond. It's the cube of many of these Solomon temples. When you went to Chartres Cathedral, they said that you didn't have to go any longer to the Jerusalem. Joseph Campbell makes a big point. This idea of going around the stone of Mecca. The pilgrimage, the spiritual pilgrimages that everybody goes on. The Lord, to see Our Lady of Lourdes. Everybody goes on these spiritual pilgrimages. But they don't enter the temple of their own heart and mind and soul. Joseph Campbell, a wonderful person that I got to hang out with a bit and share thoughts with, he talked about it as over-concretizing. That people would materialize the spiritual mysteries. My friend David Spangler talks about premature concretization. It's the opposite of premature ejaculation. You prematurely grab a form because you're afraid to be naked in the spirit soul. Osho says that ever since we left the Garden of Eden, we're so afraid of our nakedness of mind and spirit and love that we'll grab anything to hang on to. We'll start clinging to things. This is why the idea of the Klingons as being the bad guys. That clinging are the kleshas of Tibetan Buddhism. Jealousy, possessiveness. I'm sorry, you want to leave me, we're getting divorced, I have to kill you. Back in the day of the last big solar tiredness and sleep, the major witch hunts. You don't perform like I wanted you to, I whisper to the priest, you're a damn witch. And you're burned at the stake. So, over-concretizing spiritual principles. Plato thought, in pre-Christian times, Plato thought that to become enlightened, you would have to attune your higher mind. Church bells are ringing.
I'm so sorry.
Jesus!
I'm so sorry.
I thought you were Jewish.
Mother raised an Ursuline convent, remember that?
It's Easter for this guy all the time.
Merging of two paths there, sorry.
I mean, you can see how the Christian mysteries had it, like you would get kind of like, they stole everything. I mean, you would get fourfolded or crucified. Plato said that the world's souls crucified were fourfolded. And he almost got brought to the Inquisition of the time with ancient Greece. Socrates, they put him to death, and Plato almost too, because he was giving out secrets of the mystery schools. That after you get crucified, or you realize how stuck you are in the physical, emotional, mental, and your little clunky ego, separate ego, and that it hasn't been purified by the universal thinking and the universal love and some kind of realization of a God in the becoming, as Jesus would say. Don't you know your God's in becoming? It's not that you get to have fancier clothes. You might be a Prince Charming or a Sleeping Beauty, but it really had to do with the awakening of qualities and virtues, that you were heavy with qualities and virtues. So you see this idea of the coming April of Pluto returning to a place that it has been right before the American Revolutionary War. And there's a lot of tension on the earth right now due to the incredible materialism, and there are other things that are taking place besides the emotional and financial things. The North Pole has just melted. I mean, if you think about the Earth being in balance or out of balance, the North Pole has basically melted, and the South Pole has been accumulating huge amounts of ice. Many of us know, and by just looking around, that we're bottom heavy. That we overeat, and we over-acquire things that are burdensome. And we're grabbing onto form because of the emptiness within, the improper, there's no virgin within us. Part of the Templar teaching and the Grail teaching, which I'm going to get to in a minute, is that in every basement there should be a virgin. You know, the idea is, are you a virgin? So people will over-materialize this and they'll want to be a virgin again. Or there'll be, like Madonna's album, or did she have a song like a virgin or something? And a lot of people try to materialize this and concretize this as they're going to be a virgin until they get married and things like that. Not knowing that there's only serial monogamy. Let's think about that for a minute. Oh, okay. And there's lifetime to lifetime. So, the Earth is going to extremes in weather. We're both, actually, what's really happening, that takes a little while to get, is that we're getting hotter and colder simultaneously. In January, when we were having the frigid weather, they like to give it a name, so that they give it a name, they think that you're going to be okay with it, we can name it, it's not our fault, it's this polar vortex fault. And but while we were having the very severe cold weather in January, in the beginning of January, they're in a lot of water so that the lakes in Michigan are back to normal temporarily. Lots of snow and water and rain. In the West, they're having drought and heat. New Zealand's having major storms. I've been predicting to friends that England has some very heavy aspects until June, especially right this last month or so, and they're getting whacked by storm after storm after storm, and major flooding in Italy, France, the whole Caribbean area, but especially as you hit that west coast of Europe. We're having extreme hot and extreme cold, extreme wet and extreme dry, and we're going out of balance. And because I can't continue forever on this, we'll run out of time, I want to say something about the sun. The sun, from an esoteric point of view, and again, there's a completely scientific point of view that is devastatingly scary. Scientists love to get scary. But the sun is our friend. And the heart, esoterically, is the inner sun. And we can come to a new sense of health and balance with the world around us if we can, every once in a while, look at the sun. And you can't look into the sun if it's too long. I mean, you just glimpse the sun and take a quick breath. And you can close your eyes and imagine that your heart is breathing in the sun. And it's healing your heart. And then you breathe out and bless the sun, that the sun can do its work. You breathe in the sun so that you'll be reinvigorated with the etheric astral energies of the sun. You breathe in the sun. You have to use your breath to breathe in the perception of the sun into your heart. And you imagine that your sun, when you breathe out, shines back to the sun and blesses the sun that it can do its work of purifying the atmosphere. As many of you know, the sun gives out solar winds, and they go to Saturn, and they break down. The energetic and light breaks down at Saturn through Uranus and Pluto, and then comes back, just like the blood goes out and comes back to the heart. The solar energies go back to the sun. And these special times where the sun really invokes itself is 11 and 22 year cycles approximately. And we're at this, supposedly at this peak. Now, just because the sun isn't giving flares out, which by the way, it very well, may give out some sudden flares as we go into the end of this month. And as we go into April, either the sun's getting extremely quiet and scary, and also, by the way, I've mentioned it numerous times, increased radioactivity due to radio decay and radioactive pollution and the Fukushima, however you say that in Japan, and the nuclear bombs they've blown off in the past. Recent articles in the newspaper talk about high-level radiation is still hanging up there in the sky. If you fly a lot, you're exposed to more radiation. Seaweed, according to Harvard Med School and the United States government, seaweed, miso soup, helps get rid of low-level radioactivity and metal pollutions and auto exhaust and such. But the oceans are becoming highly polluted due to this Japanese radioactive leak that nobody knows for real what's going on over there. And I've been saying for years and years, and I learned it from Osawa in the beginning of macrobiotics, that if there's too much radioactivity on the Earth and too much noise pollution, that there'd be more volcanoes, and that the volcanoes spew this subtle ash that goes around the Earth, picks up all the dirt and radiation, and then falls back down. In the last few days, there's been 2 major new volcanoes. One in Indonesia, one in Hawaii, on the Big Island. Spooking them out in Hawaii. It erupted, didn't they erupt like 20, 30 times or something? They're erupting like a bunch of times and putting on a big show. And you can go on the internet and see like this ash. Now, this has been predicted that this could happen with astrology, by the way. Pluto is volcanoes, but Pluto is also the planet that's associated with feudal lords, corporate takeover of the world, really heavy rich people with a lot of poor people. 1.6 million people just lost their unemployment, further benefits. I don't mind it, by the way, but I think they should make work programs. I've been waiting for Obama to make some kind of work. I don't take away all the unemployment, give them jobs. I mean, that's another way to go, you know? I mean, how long can you, either you're the mom or dad or you're not, and so you have to figure that out. And so I'm all for the unemployment thing, by the way, but I'm saying that if it's going to go this way, okay, cool, let's create jobs. And Obama's, you know, how big is it? Creating jobs. But we'll see what happens. Necessity is the mother of invention, and we might need greater things. I mean, people really wake up when they have a broken something, you know? You have a broken heart or a broken leg or wrist. I mean, I know somebody just broke their wrist, and they're freaking out, and they're looking at themselves. And, you know, you always do that. You lose your car or your job or your lover. Whatever the consciousness has identified with, you lose the form, and then you wake up. When you die, you go to the wake. Because you wake up. That's when you wake up. It's getting a little late. You can only promise to do better next time. Right? So, Rudolf Steiner said that the Templars were the custodians of the Holy Grail. There's a lot of propaganda and conspiracy theories out there. The United States government admits to spending millions and millions of dollars on creating conspiracy theories and propaganda for whatever their agenda is, and everyone's seemingly doing it. Every advertisement you see on TV, isn't that propaganda in a way? Trying to influence you with some kind of magic and noise and colored lights. So the Crusades take place, and some of the Crusaders and spiritual peoples find out spiritual secrets from the Far East. To make the story short, and in the 8th century, possibly in the 600s, 700s, Tsongkhapa, earlier, and there's a number of like Tibetan lamas operating. There's a lot of spiritual things that are continuations of the ancient Egyptian and Greek mystery schools. And we don't have time to go into this, but I'm just saying that forever there's always spiritual teaching somewhere to liberate the mind and heart from the burdensome chore of trying to understand the physical incarnation. And the spiritual self is embedded for learning lessons in reincarnation again and again. And this was taught by everybody until 325 AD at the Nicene Council, when the Catholic Church ran the world, and they announced that you couldn't believe in reincarnation and karma, and that they should instill fear and a permanent heaven and hell, and there should be tithing to the Catholic Church, and tithing is a form of feudalism. And it was in the 9th century, especially, and in the Grail time, that the Templars appear, and the myth of the Grail. At the height of the witch hunts, where once you were declared a witch, the church took all your land and your possessions, blessed it and recirculated it among the mayors and the landlords and the church. And it was at this time that the legends of the Holy Grail appeared, which seemed like mythical child stories, fairy tales, that gave spiritual teachings that allowed any individual to experience the self within, the spiritual self within, in relation to the eternal self within, that was in relationship to the whole of the cosmos and the whole of the earth. And the Templars arise, and they invent checks and banking. That you could give them all your money, travel across the country, give them a little piece of paper, and get your money back at the other side. While they're in operation, even if they're, who knows? Even, let's say they're bad guys and they're leaking out spiritual advice that anybody could use. I mean, the real rebels, I think, are the people who, they're not after your money, they're after everyone becoming happier and freer and co-creative with the world around them. And the Templars built all these great cathedrals that anybody could go into and have a spiritual experience. And they protected the roads, and the Knights of the Grail, King Arthur's Knights, possibly beginning in the 3rd century. The idea of the Knights was to protect the little ones, always protect women. Nobody is protecting women. In all wars, they're raped, violated, they're second-class citizens at best. All the religions, women are not running the major religions, the major sports, guns, Bibles, money. They may inherit the money, but they give it to men investors. This might be changing a little bit, but not much. And so here's the early beginnings, 2,000 years ago, of King Arthur and going into the Grail legends of where women should be protected, children should be protected. And as you know, the Super Bowl is the number one time for child sex slavery, female sex slavery, and gambling. And men hitting women. For one day of the year in the United States, men hit women more on that day than any other day. Everyone knows this, if you read the newspaper. The FBI says they're going to try to crack down on the child pornography the child slavery, sex slavery. Obama said he's going to get rid of child pornography on the internet. Let's all write a letter and say, what happened to that? There's no need for it. Living the pictures. Pornography is living in the pictures of a person, not a real person. Gambling is gambling on something outside of yourself and not something inside. That you should learn piano. They should learn to garden. They should learn to be a Templar and wear a white red cross on a white outfit. Walk through your day. These are symbolic things. And one of the sayings of the Templars is that each of us is our own king and our own pope. No wonder they were murdered. Each of you is your own king and pope. Imagine that. So the Templars, they would also grow gardens, and during the plagues and when everybody was getting sick with what's it called, Black Plague, or the what? The bubonic plague in the Dark Ages. And, they didn't have that problem, and they had walled-in gardens, and they seem to have taken the best from the East and West. They were accused of making peace with the Arabic Moors, and that they were making peace everywhere they went. They had secret peace treaties, and that they were building these cathedrals. All the great cathedrals were built in just this couple hundred years, and when they murdered the Templars, they all disappeared. The great cathedrals stopped being built. And I think there's something to be had by understanding the idea of walking into the cathedral, all the great cathedrals, whether it's St. Paul's or Winchester Cathedral or Chartres Cathedral, all the great cathedrals in France and Europe, Germany, Switzerland. And I don't have the time to go into I've been studying the synagogues too, the older ones. I don't have time to go into that research. But certainly we could look at any Rosicrucian or Masonic lodge or modern, even Druid circle mounds in the mountains in America, and the idea of the Vesca Pisces as two circles that meet with an opening, and even trying to find the center of that. We can see that when the Grail was in the troubadours were starting to be murdered for their spiritual teaching and found out, because they were so afraid to have people be independent and free. America is a definite experiment in freedom and democracy and a republic that is worthy of our continual vigilance. And not only introspection, but external research. But when you go into these cathedrals, you actually have a sense that there's a right and left door, and you walk somehow through the middle. And then when you get to the center, there's something going on underneath. And underneath is Isis or Mary with a babe, a virgin with a child at the heart. And you can see in yourself that if you look within yourself, that your spiritual soul, your deepest spiritual soul, deeper than your woundology and your psychology, deeper than your thought and your feeling, your deepest virgin soul is a pure black Madonna, a pure darkness of infinite potential, of which a star is born, or a child of the star is born of your spiritual soul, your cognitive, immortal self. And that you see this idea of the virgin soul with the birth from the heart. And Rudolf Steiner points out that the Raphael Madonna with child painting is the same kind of painting. And when you look at the Grail moon of springtime, where the moon, the first new moon appears 3 days after the new moon, you see a cup, a Grail cup, that holds this host of the moon. You know, the sun is lighting up the moon in such a way that it looks like a Grail cup. And when you see this, you see the same thing in Wolfram Eschenbach's Parsifal, of when Parsifal sees the woman with the bridegroom, and she's holding her dead husband. And there's 3 drops of blood in the snow. This is an important part of, and I advise all of you to read Parsifal by Eschenbach and Cretin de Troyes' Parsifal too, the Romance Mysteries of the Grail, from France. And when this same picture of the young, beautiful woman with the dead bridegroom is the same picture of Mary holding the dead Jesus the Christ at the foot of the cross. And this idea of the sun dying into the moon to come into form, and then the Grail cup fills as like almost like a Eucharist type thing that then decreases and pours out to the earth in springtime and the merry mysteries of May in the springtime in the northern hemispheres. And these are cosmic spiritual significators. Part of what I'm doing here is the ideal of the Rosicrucian and the Grail Knights. Part of what I'm doing is trying to introduce you to a creative imagination that, if you wish, would empower you to go on a Grail quest. Or to understand that when you take a deep breath to your heart and hold very still in your mind, that a golden rose is trying to bloom in your heart. That each of us has a spiritual spark that needs to be breathed into a fire. And that this fire, being burnt at the stake, is like a concretized materialistic form of being on fire with love. That the rose is love. That if you stand up straight and open your arms, that really the heart is both the rose that blooms on the cross. Rudolf Steiner, in Outline of Occult Science, another book I strongly advise any of you who are daring to understand spiritual science, the science of unfolding your spiritual soul, that you would attempt to read the Rosicrucian Wisdom by Rudolf Steiner, or listen to the CDs, or to read the book Outline of Occult Science, in which Rudolf Steiner said that he wanted to call that book the Holy Grail, by the way. And he goes to, he has a meditation on the Rose Cross, which is that you imagine yourself as being a black cross, symbolically representing your eventual death. The death of your desire. The death of your physical body will come when it will. But meditation is the temporal death of your desire. That the idea behind this, for those of you who are here that are new to this idea, is that is there a God or isn't there? Are you important or aren't you? Are you just a piece of matter to be kicked around and enslaved? And then you can sit around and blame the boss, blame your mother, blame somebody for not informing you correctly or teaching you? Is that what you're hearing? The idea is that there is actual knowledge that can awaken your inner self to be participant with the world around you, that you have an inner feeling that has intelligence, that your heart awakens in such a way that your feelings can be intelligent about how you operate in the world. That when you make love, it's for real. It's for good. It's for good. That does not mean he's going to stay forever. It means it's for good rather than evil. That you make love and it's for good. And it's going to help the world be a better place in everything you do. The Dalai Lama says that when you flush the toilet, you can wish that one day you won't pollute the earth. He told me this personally. I don't know why he was telling me that. One can only guess. My mother probably had better ideas than I do about why. He also told me that when you make love, if you could sit in your heart with emptiness and selflessness and wish for enlightenment, at the same time you bless everyone who suffers, using the force of your pleasure, that you could push the wish for enlightenment. After that, he looked at the other people saying there and he said, I do not advise monks to try this. The monks had taken a vow not to try those things. Most of us are trying odd things, trying to see what happens. So the idea behind this, Rudolf Steiner's meditation, is that you meditate on a black cross, you imagine the death of your desire or your physical death one day, and you imagine that a rose blooms right in the middle of the cross. Or you have 7 roses bloom around, making a circle on the cross. And that the roses represent the Christ or your 7 virtues. The 7 levels of consciousness or 7 earth evolutions fully bloom. Then the next step is you're looking at this imagination of a black cross with a red rose blooming on it, and you imagine that it disappears and you just feel what it's like. The death of your desire and fear, and the full blooming of your love and intelligence. What does it feel like to have that? And then you erase the feeling, you let the feeling disappear, and you experience what it must be like to have the will that's underneath, the primordial will that is underneath this that brought you here. In effect, this is the descent of the gods.